Warning: the following program may contain material not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
The borders of space and time have opened once again. And transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you. Wake up and remember.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest is a seeker of truth, explorer of the unknown, and a master storyteller. From mysterious encounters to transformative adventures, his path has been anything but ordinary. We're diving into the experiences that shaped his journey and getting an exclusive look at his brand new book, which promises to challenge everything we think we know, and some real surprises. All this plus more. Please welcome our good friend and returning guest, author and podcaster, Michael Kopf. Michael, my friend, welcome back to Let's Find Out.
Thank you for having me back. It's an honor to be here.
Oh man, the honor is all on this side of the table. I mean, we were just talking on the pre-interview is just when I think I'm busy, you're just as busy as I am. I mean, I have 2 shows, you have 2 shows, but you're a writing machine now.
I am. It's funny how if it's a topic that's like really in the front of my mind, I can write a lot really quickly. But if it's a topic that I'm kind of like, yeah, I think about it, but then I don't think about it, it takes me longer to write on it. And so I'm enjoying the process though, because a lot of people think, oh, it takes years to write a book, and I'm not saying it can't, but if you just let go and let the words go, I find you can write faster. And if you're not so worried about all the editing and spelling and everything up front, you can write a whole lot really quick and then have someone you trust go back and look at it and go, what's the repeats? What's the grammar mistakes? What's the spelling mistakes? And fix it, and you're good as gold. But I think that's the hiccup with a lot of writers is they try to get it right the first run. And I find you gotta let that go.
You just got to let it fly. And then once you're done, go back and reread what it is that you did. Now, we're definitely going to get into your new book very shortly. But one of the very interesting things we were also talking about, because I know I mentioned you have 2 shows and you have a great lineup of guests all the time. So let's go back in time before you even started doing the shows and before you started writing. If we get back to the time to when you decided to finally start your shows, how was life for you before that? And then when did you make that decision?
So I was actually, so the full story is, in the abridged version, is the first year investigating with the team, I was approached by a network who wanted me to do a podcast show. And I said no, because I'm not known and I don't know anybody. So I don't know how, the show would last and, who would want to come on. And so I talked myself out of it thinking, yeah, nobody's going to want to listen to me. I have, no namesake or any cred in the field. So, I was like, nope. And he was like, you sure? Because you got the perfect presence for it. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. So I go on and I continue paranormal investigating. And I end up leaving that team just because we were wanting to go separate paths. And I was more wanting to collaborate with people and spread and learn from others. And next thing I know, my path crosses at an event. I think it was like 2 or 3 years later with the same person. and he's got his setup going, and this is like a paranormal event, kind of a mini paracon. And he's talking with me, and he's like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to some people." And so I was like, "Okay." So I walk up to this camera and I start to talk, and I get like maybe 5 seconds of time, and I get pulled away. I come back and I go, "Oh man, I didn't get my 15 seconds of fame," just laughing with him. And he goes, "Oh no, we got bigger plans for you. Um, so what do you think about a show?" And I was like, "All right, yeah, let's think about this. How would that look? What would it be like?" And at the time, I was with a friend who we were investigating together and doing a lot of stuff, and I was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about podcasting? I just got offered this, and I kind of think it would be something cool for the two of us." And she came on board, and we're working on it, trying to get this polished thing because we both come from kind of a career based background, and we're like, yeah, when you turn in something, you turn in a final project. You don't turn in your first draft and go, "Hey, I'm glad you like this." But I get a phone call and it says, "Can you launch in a week?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have an intro. I don't have an outro. I don't have this, and this." He goes, "Let's get you on a video call." So I get on a video call with a bunch of people on the network, and they're all going, "Nobody has an intro to start with. All of your things that you're saying you can't do, nobody has when they start." And so I was like, "Okay." So the show started, and it kind of just progressed from there. Is I never saw myself being behind a camera talking to people about their experiences and sharing mine. And I then started, to realize this is something I could actually do. And it kind of grew, and we ended up changing the name of the show because we realized it was confusing a lot of people, because my mental idea versus what actually came on screen was like two different things. And so we're like, yeah, we got to find a new title, rebrand. And that's how it's stuck since. And that's where my first show came from, The Energy That Surrounds Us. Carla Norris was huge in helping me start it. And then she went off and did her own project, which she had told me she wanted to do. So I, check her stuff out, and I'm proud of what she's doing and what her show has become. And I've taken on, doing my show and making it my own, and having guests come on and of different backgrounds and different areas of expertise or areas of interest. And so I've kind of went from being just paranormal to understanding the paranormal to be anything that's unexplained. So I broadened my topic field to be that, and I feel still in the paranormal purview, but I give myself more freedom to go into like healing modalities or techniques that people use or experiences they may have had with portals and all kinds of things, where yeah, the show's kind of just taken off on its own, and I'm kind of along for the ride, so to speak.
I mean, you're doing tremendously well. And as you were talking about your experiences when you first started, I kind of went back in time in my own mind when I first started. And I couldn't have been any more, I'm not going to use the word scared, but more doubtful of my own skills. And, but you just got to do it. And I was in the days of, I wasn't even using StreamYard at that point. I was at the mercy of Skype. And it was not only the most terrible thing to use for a podcast at the time, it was temperamental, and not everybody had it or knew how to use it. It was awful, man. But it kind of worked for the first year or so. Um, but I learned as I went, and you were one of my first guests, and I always appreciate it. And in talking about also, side note, I know that I get in tangents. You know me by now. Where you talked about the old name. What was the old name of your show? What was that called?
Exploring our secret past.
All right. Now mine was Let's Find Out with co-host Diego, right? Because for
Right.
a while I was on a show with somebody else with a partner, and I was the co-host for the show. So I kind of coined that name. I didn't trademark. This is what I call myself, and I built on that. When I came out with the show, people's like co-host Diego's like, so who's the host? Well, I am. Because that doesn't make any damn sense. I go, then I got to tell him the whole story behind it, and I'm losing time. And then when the network picked the show up, he goes, "Okay, look, I like your show. We got to do something about the name of your podcast." I was like, "Oh man, tell me I got to start all over again." He goes, "Why co-host Diego? It doesn't make a damn sense to me." Then I explained to them the story. He goes, "No, we're not doing that. So let's find out with Diego. You got it." I go, "Yes, sir." And here we are.
Yeah, sometimes you need a fresh perspective because in our minds it makes sense, and we expect everybody is going to be understanding what we're thinking and where our thought process is. And there's growing pains too in podcasting, where you get so into the topic of what you're talking about, it's like your boundaries just drop and you end up talking about stuff you wish you hadn't talked about and brought up, and you're like, oh man, whoops, too late now. And you just hope it blows over and nobody gets upset about it. And there are times where, yeah, we learn on the job, so to speak. And I am grateful to everyone that I've worked with and that I've done shows with, because they have infinite patience with me and I with them, and we have a mutual respect. And so it comes across where if I ask something that I wasn't supposed to ask, they're like, hey, yeah, I'm not really wanting to go there. And I'm like, okay, cool. And we move on. And that's that. And I'm like in the back of my mind going, oh crap. I thought I was overdoing that. And here I did it again. And you can really get yourself into a mind trap with being the host. But at the end of the day, the formula that I use for my shows is up until I hit live, I am a complete nervous wreck going, oh my God, is this show going to be good? Are people going to like this topic? Am I going to be able to relate to the guest? And should I have prepped questions? Should I have done more homework? And all these lists. But then when you hit live, you just got to exhale it all out and just go with it. And where it goes, it goes. And like you were talking about, going on tangents and, oh man, here we go. I love the tangents. I think sometimes the best information comes out of those tangents. And so that's why for 3 seasons, I never put what topics we were going to be discussing, because you never know. I mean, you could have a guest who we're going to be talking about, say, a haunted hotel that they went to. And then they come on and they're like, man, I had this really awesome experience this morning, but we're talking about the hotel, so let's go there. And it's like, no, I want to talk about what you saw this morning. Let's go there first. And so that's why I never wanted to limit field of topics. And going into season 4, I decided, instead of putting the date and time, because my cousin that helps me, we were laughing and going, they don't know the date and time of your show by now, then they'll find it because it's been 3 years now. And so I was like, all right, let's do topics. And I've kind of found it's a nice thing to have because if I feel the conversation starting to wind up, I can go, hey, and segue to something that was on the list that we hadn't covered yet. And so I'm seeing that benefit. But yeah, I kind of, though, liked having the freedom to talk about whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes, just what you're saying, the tangents and the side stories, like the side quests, wind up being even more entertaining and informational than the actual original formula you were going to have. And in the spirit of what we're just talking about, you're going into your season 3. I'm going into year 4, which is 4.
Season 4, I'm going into. I'm in right now.
Season 4, year 4 for me. So hey, look, we're twinsies
Yeah.
all this time. And has there been a topic that you haven't covered yet?
You know, there was. And the reason I say was is because I recently had a guest on to cover that topic. And so what was kind of comical is you kind of see me geeking out when I start the episode because I'm like, yeah, welcome to this adventure. And I'm like, you guys are in for a treat. I have been trying to get this topic on for 4 seasons now. I finally got it. And here it is. And I'm like, man, I hope all that hype I just did delivered. Because it's like I get super excited when it's a topic that has taken me so long to get someone to come forward with and share their experiences around it. Like one example is black eyed children. I couldn't find anyone that had experience with them and would be willing to talk about it on a show. And I came across Dr. Schultz, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I can talk about that." I was like, "Oh my god, thank you." And we hit it off and had a fun episode. And I think that's the beauty though of what we do is, we're and when I say we, I'm speaking of you in this as well, is when we're authentically into a topic, you can tell because our emotions and everything is behind it, our excitement, and you can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it. And so those episodes, I think, get more attention than when we have somebody on. It's like, oh, yeah, we're talking about this place again for the umpteenth time. And okay, yeah. And it's like, people I think can be like, yeah, you're not really into this one. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, those are bad. I just mean when you get those new topics that have never been talked about, there's like a new excitement because you're like, this is all new. This is brand new. Never been on this show yet. And there's an excitement that goes with that I think people gravitate towards.
Yes, because the excitement spreads, and our friends, listeners, will also get into that topic as well. And you reminded me of something. I just had covered a topic a few weeks ago that I never talked about on the show before, only because I knew about it. Everybody knows about it, but I didn't know enough to find somebody who would know until I found that person. I had my first episode about Jack the Ripper not long ago.
Oh, wow.
And I was like blown away because there's a supernatural element to that as well, which I learned and is a great learning experience for me. Now, which brings me now to your new book, because as I'm looking at the cover, just as you were talking, there you go. I'm looking at it. I kind of know what I'm in for because I kind of know you. talking about the cover.
You know,
What? Yeah, because I was going to ask you about, of course, the cover, the book Deeper Insights into the Mind of Michael. So I already know we're in for a great journey. Now, with this book and the artwork, like I said, telling me what's going on there, is this more of a personal book, or are we digging deeper into your experiences, insights, and opinions about these subjects?
so it's interesting that you pull up the cover because each cover of my books has Easter eggs in it, so to speak, to where I give little hints as to what's going to be in the book by what you see. And with this cover, I actually did this cover myself with AI's help, Canva Pro, great source. But in the book, I go into topics that people ask me a lot about or that I think about. And in other books, I may have hit on them and then been like, okay, yeah, this is what this is, and moved on. Well, I was thinking to myself and going, did I really do a good job explaining that? Or did I kind of just blaze over it and kind of be like, yeah, hurry up and learn it and move on? And so I was like, some of these topics actually need a more in depth look. And so what I did was I would take the reader and I would go, okay, here's this topic. Now, how do I start researching this topic and diving into it, going down the rabbit hole? So, the first thing I do is I find conventional definitions of the topic. Let's say I'm talking about past lives. So, I'll go to like psychology books or websites actually and get their definition and so I'm like, okay, here's what they say this is. And I'm like, now, from my experiences, this is how I see what a past life is. And then I'll go and say, well, these are the insights now that I have of what a past life is, what it means, how it impacts us. And then at the end, I simply will go, so, knowing what we know about past lives, do they benefit us or not? And it's like I leave it as a question for the reader to decide what the next step is. Meanwhile, you've seen where I get my insights, you see where my thought process goes, how I connect dots, and I see things in my perception. So, my hope is the reader will sit there and go, hey, this is really cool and this makes kind of sense and this helps me explain this. And so will go on their own personal journey into studying it or looking deeper into it. Or may go, yeah, this is interesting, but it's a topic. In which case they'll just flip the page and go on. And I'm like, that's perfectly cool too, because not everybody is going to be interested in the exact same topics all the time. But my hope is that, say, the guy or lady that says, I'm not into past lives right now, maybe in 6 months, 10 years from now, they may go, you know, this experience is starting to make me think more about that. Didn't I read about this in a book and then find my book and go, yeah, here it is, and reread it? And now it's like, yeah, let's go down this rabbit hole. Let's go further. So it's like planting a seed or, however they want to go with it. But I didn't want to draw any conclusions because, one, I'm not an expert on these subjects. And two, I'm not a, know it all that has all the answers. So I don't want to sit there and go, yeah, past lives do this, this, and this for us, and that's what they're all about. And then somebody goes, well, what about this? And I'm like, well, damn, I didn't think about that. Now I got to rewrite my book because now this is coming in. And so that's why I left it open, is because I want the reader to decide for themselves what the next step of that topic is. And I pull resources, and some of the topics in the book I pull from movies that I've watched. And I'm like, here's a movie scene. Here's quotes from a movie, to help illustrate my point. And it's like, my goal really and truly was, books are not the only medium for knowledge. TV shows, movies, books, magazines, anything can be a source for knowledge if you look at it the right way. And so that was my other goal, was to just show people everything is not what we've seen. Like I talk about Never Ending Story and a new way that I see it now. And it's like, and I'm hoping, when people read it, they go, oh my God, he's right. That is so true. Well, what else may be true about that movie? Does it happen to other characters in the book? Who's related to who? Who's, so it's like, basically, it's like a huge machine of planting seeds and just letting people either let them grow or stay in the ground until they're ready to grow.
And with the topics that you cover in the new book, some of them you experienced yourself.
A lot of them I experienced myself because I'm the type of author, I don't use AI to write with. I don't have anything against writers using AI, but I'm the type of personality of, if I write something in this book, if Diego asks me a question about it, I want to be able to answer it right away and not have to go, wait, where is that? And go, oh, that was the AI. Let me read that real quick and see what it's referencing, because it's not my words, it's not my experience. So that's where everything in my books is personal to me. So if you were to say, hey, in this chapter, you talk about this, I can right away go, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Hit me. What's your question? I got you, and answer it. Instead of sitting there thinking, what was I thinking that AI translated for me and made it sound better?
Now, we're talking about these topics. Which chapter was most challenging for you to write about? Because I would take a guess here. I would think, for me, time travel would be kind of something very challenging to write about. But out of all those topics, which one gave you the not the hardest time, but the one you really had to sit down and just give it a real deep thought on?
Well, actually, there was probably 2 or 3 chapters that did that for me. One of the chapters, I'm actually looking at the table of contents. Because you're asking about the chapters, I'm like, ooh, let me make sure I remember this right. But one of the chapters that I had a hard time with was growing up differently. That's chapter 2. And the reason is because growing up, you see life unfolding in a certain way and certain things happen, and you're watching everything around you and realizing you're not reacting the same way, or you're not getting into things the same way. Why is that? And so you start to think about, why am I different? Why am I not, reacting the same way? And so that was challenging for me to write, because I'm not sure how to put into words what that's really like. And I'm hoping that in writing the way I did, that the readers get a kind of idea. And another, the following chapter actually was an equally challenging one, was the power of thought versus perception. What does our thoughts, do? What power do our thoughts have? And then you mix in perception, and then you have to define, well, wait, perception is not a thought. Perception forms the thought and molds the thought, but the thought is based on the perception. And so you got to watch, are they both in congruency, or is one out, in which case your thoughts are biased or skewed. And then there was another chapter, chapter 5 was, what does it mean to forgive? And that one was a little bit of a challenge for me because I'm a naturally forgiving person to an extent, depending on what the situation was. And I realized in, my life, I always was wanting to forgive my part, but then I had to realize, wait a minute, there's another part to this that I don't have control over. And so if I let that go, how, then does that affect this part? And so that's something that I hope people get benefit from, is seeing that, just because I forgive doesn't mean the other person forgives. And so I can't control that person. I can only control myself. And so, yeah, I mean, there's something that comes with learning the, extent of what you can do in a situation versus what you feel needs to be done in a situation. And I had a fun chapter in there where I took ideas and I put them in there, and I titled it. Oh, what did I title it? Let me make sure I get it right. Oh yeah, more truths we blindly accepted. And what I mean by that is, like I put in there, we accept the sky is blue during the day, grass is green. But how do we know that? Because someone told us that. Well, I then had a sciencey type person say, well, grass is green because it's reflecting the frequency of green. And then I was like, well, how do we know that's what the frequency of green is? And then I took it a step further and said, well, if we saw the world in frequency code like the Matrix, the world would be kind of boring. Seeing the same code everywhere, and just, your mind going, okay, yeah, that's a tree, that's a bush, that's grass, okay. So I was like, I'll accept that. I blindly accept grass is green and the sky is blue because it's prettier to look at. But I also make it clear that I'm accepting that that's a truth that, I can't prove is true. And so there are so many things in life that we grow up and we just say, yeah, that's that because that's what we've been told. But how do we know that person knew that answer? And one of the things you'll find interesting is, I've always been fascinated by the moon because sometimes I see it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's out during the day, sometimes it's not. And so I'm like, and we only see one side of the moon all the time, even though it's supposed to be moving in space with us and we're moving. So I'm like, something's off. And I realized there's pre-Columbian, Zulus, the Greeks, and other cultures all around the world that have knowledge of civilizations that predated the moon. There was no moon when they were around. And I'm like, wait a minute. How is it science tells us the moon broke off from the earth and has been around forever, but these cultures never had a moon? They talk about when it arrived in the sky. And so I'm like, if it was just the pre Columbian tribes, I'd be like, well, maybe they just didn't know what they were seeing and now they understand it. So now they realize it's there. But how do you do that with indigenous tribes, the Greeks, the Zulus? I mean, that's too widespread. And so I'm like, the moon can't have been here forever. There's no way the information could have crossed oceans and continents to specific people. That just doesn't add up in my book. And so that's what I posed to the reader, going, what do you think? Is the moon always been there and these people, just didn't notice it? Or is the moon a fairly new object? And why is it up there?
Could you imagine being in a civilization that did not have a moon, and then all of a sudden it pops up? I would be freaking the F out if I were
Oh, I
them
know.
back.
Well, yes and no, because I think there's ways that it's done that it doesn't freak us out, because I grew up with the moon was only up during nighttime, sun was up during the day. Sun equals day, moon equals night. Now I go outside around noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The moon is out and the sun is out, and they're both like shining at each other. And I'm like, when did this happen? Okay, well, this is weird. But then I just go on with my day. I never really think about and stop and go, wait a minute. Oh my God, the moon is out during the day. What is going on? And so I think with the way we're programmed and with the way we're taught what's going on is the moon could have appeared and they just said to everybody, hey, look, there's a bright object in the night sky now. We can now go out at night. And everyone's like, great, there's an object in the sky at night. We can now go out at night. We don't have to carry fire with us. And it could have been as simple as that. And it's not people freaking out going, oh my God, there's a big ball in the night sky now. But who's to say how it really unfolded and, what it was like and what they would define it as? Because one thing we had to remember, and I make a point of this when talking about ancient cultures, is if you see a craft flying in the sky, like if we were to take a plane to say 1776 and fly it over the sky, every one of them is going to say, wow, there's a flying cart in the sky. And so we're going to imagine a cart in the sky that's flying. But that's not what was there. It was a ship, an airplane. But they don't know what an airplane is, so they don't know to call it out as an airplane. And so where I'm going with this is like in the super ancient text where they talk about flying chariots. We're assuming it's a chariot that they're actually riding through the sky, and it could be a spaceship because they don't know how to describe a ship that's in the sky in that day. They only know transportation's a chariot. So we have to remember the time period we're talking about and to understand what they're really talking about.
I'm glad you brought that up. We're on the same frequency. You might have been reading my mind as you were talking. With no moon, and then the moon appears, everybody's like, okay, cool, we have a moon now. Talk about flying chariots. Could be UFOs. In today's time, seeing that I can't talk about my generation, but generations after Generation X, they see things in seconds, or maybe even minutes, videos, whatever it is, right? If one day there's a worldwide observation or a worldwide witnessing of a UFO or a spacecraft, I think we're like, okay, cool ship. We're moving on with our day. Similar to the theory of they finally saw a moon. Yeah, we can come out at night. Really cool. I don't think it would be that big of a deal. Maybe, right?
Yeah. I think it all depends, if you're, using fire to travel by night and you're like, you got to keep that lit or you were going to die because we'll get lost. There's a lot of pressure. So, do you even go out at night or do you stay in your cave and wait until morning when it's safer because you can see what's going on? And if the moon comes out and all of a sudden you look out and you're like, hey, I don't need fire to step outside. It's like a whole new world opens up and you're like, we can travel by night now and we can go explore and may grow to more territory because now you know the path. And even when it's dark, because the moon is blocked by clouds, you still know the path. And so you can still walk it. But there's a bit of muscle memory, I think, that goes with it. And also a bit of, I think we have an innate knowledge that is buried in us and isn't activated until we're into certain scenarios. And so what I mean by that is like stand at a cave entrance and all of a sudden you can see the trees at night because it's a full moon and clear sky. And you're like, ooh, wait a minute. I can see the trees. There's a part of you that says it's safe to go. Go and go explore. It's in your DNA that, yes, we can move now because we can see. And you're not worried about the dangers from above, like, a T Rex coming along and, making a feast of you because he's faster than you are, or raptors coming around because, they're faster and they hunt better by day. But at night, there are other things that we're not aware of yet, but we still have that innate exploration in us that says, hey, I can see. Let's at least go to that tree, come back, and be like, hey, I went and touched that tree. Then the next person goes and touches that tree. And then another person goes and touches the tree. And they're like, we can totally go and hunt at night. We can go and explore, find, neighboring tribes, what they're doing at night and have the advantage because we're at night and they're not yet. And, learning and exploring. But it always takes that one that's going to have that innate sense within them to take that step instead of going, oh no, that can't be a good thing that there's light out there because that's never been there before. That's got to be a bad omen. And so you're going to get those kind of people that are like, no, I don't trust that. That's never been here before. And they're going to be the hardest ones to prove, yes, it's safe to step out in the moonlight. No harm's going to come stepping out in the moonlight. But yeah, I mean, you're always going to have both, but you're always going to have the ones that'll take in the step and those who will begrudgingly take the step or stay behind and just say, nope, I'm staying here. I'll protect here. You guys go. I don't have any interest out there.
So in a way, it's kind of like a slow progression into accepting what's happening. But you just have to venture out and be a little bit brave in order to accept the change.
And it can be slow, or it can be, let's think about, in today's world. If it's, if you're outside and let's say in a forest, and you're walking around and you're on the path, so you got your flashlight, you're not worried, and you see a light coming towards you on the path. We're not going to sit there and freak out and run back and, run to the safety of home because a light was in the forest. We're going to be like, oh, somebody's coming. So we're going to go towards it, assuming it's somebody there. We're not going to go, oh, it's a UFO or an alien, so we got to run and hide. Someone's out to get us. We're not going to have that. But if we're, in a situation where, say someone broke into your house and you ran into the forest and then you see a flashlight coming your way, yeah, you're going to run away from that flashlight thinking it's the guy that broke into the house. And so there is a psychological effect of we'll either, go towards it or away from it depending on what emotional state we're in. And so I don't necessarily think, the first day of Moonlight, everyone's going to stand at the door and be like, oh my God, I can't step out. Somebody is going to step out.
Mm.
But the whole tribe may take a few days to go, yeah, it's safe. Yeah, okay. Let's go do this. What can we, and adapt their methods? What can we use now that it's nighttime that we can't use during the day? And so I don't necessarily think, we assume everything takes a long time to adapt to, but there are so many things that we adapt to right away. And that to me is the key to the human spirit, is how adaptable we are to our surroundings. Because I mean, let's look at, so here's another example that puts it in another light. You, Diego, and I, we're podcasters. We put our faces on a screen and talk to people, and other people are like, oh my God, I cannot put my face on screen and talk to people. I get such stage fright. I could not do what you do. And they don't do it. And then, say, 4 months down the road, they're like, hey, I actually want to try it because, it doesn't seem so bad. Then they become, a face on the internet, on podcast shows, and they get, out their message out. But it's how you deal with the initial fear of doing it, because you and I both know when we started our very first shows, there was no, hey, leave your nerves at the door when you push live. You are like the entire show going, oh my God, is this landing? Oh my God, was that joke funny? Oh my God, did I do this right? Or oh my God, did I just blow this? Is this going to be my one and only shot? And, you have so many things running through your mind. And when it's over, you sit there and you go, wow, half of what I was thinking just got thrown out the door because I just proved it wrong. I did it. And over progression, we don't totally erase our fears of being, behind the screen and doing what we're doing, but we come up with new ways to adapt and change and, look at the fear and go, yeah, I had that fear, but I know from doing this and this, I got this. And so we do it and we push through and we persevere, but it's a learning curve and there's a learning to it, and nobody is going to just wake up and go, okay, I'm going to be the best podcaster I can be, and I got this, and I'm just going to do this, because I'll be honest, I doubt that ever happens.
Yeah, for me, I'm just happy that I don't go out there and make a fool of myself. I consider that to be a success. And it took me, although I messed around here and there, just now into my fourth year, I'm now putting more episodes on video, which I never thought I'd do. Not really that comfortable with it, but you challenge yourself. You take that little step outside that cave. You go touch the tree. So now I'm touching the tree and it's video. The next tree might be something different.
Yeah, and for me, the difference is I always did video, so I'm comfortable with video. And I think is because I can see people's cues, so I can see how things land. But when you're on audio only, you can't see, if people are getting interested in this topic, or if they're just over there like twiddling their thumbs and going, is he ever going to stop talking about this? And so we can move on to this. And so I always get super nervous doing audio only, because I don't know if I'm talking too much or not enough, or how what I'm saying is landing, because I have no visual
Mm.
cues that I'm used to seeing. And so I'm like, always like, as soon as I'm done with those, my literal first thing I'll do is go, it's done. Can't take it back now. It's done. And what it is, it is. And I breathe, because I'm like, yeah, for that reason. Where with video, I don't have that fear of, what's going to happen if this happens, because yeah, it's just different for me. And so I love how you're pointing out, you were audio first and now coming to video. So it's like we're two opposites of the same coin. And I'm now comfortable doing audio and video. You're getting comfortable doing video and audio. And it just goes to show my point of, we're adaptive. We can change, and we're not cast in stone how we do things.
Yeah, and everything makes sense after the way you just say it. But I'll tell you one thing though, because I was just doing the audio only. I did cheat a little bit because I did have the guests on camera, but I only released the video because some people don't want to be on camera, and then sometimes you just don't release that part. But eventually I went out there, got out the cave, touched the tree. So you said it so perfectly, and now I know this book is hot off the press. I think not long ago, because the last time I spoke with you, it was awakening my journey into the paranormal, and
Right.
then this one came out. Well, I mean, not soon after. I don't like asking this question because I know that's like, man, I just dropped this book. Why are you asking me? Am I thinking about writing another one? Because I know you do two other shows too, but are you going to keep writing or are you going to take a break?
So the first book I wrote, I broke into a 4-book series, different aspects of my life. And so I thought about writing just one book, but then I was like, well, I have these topics that I just released. I have another topic in mind, and people were, when I would explain a topic, they're like, you should write a book about that topic. And I was like, really? They're like, yeah, there is no book about that. And so I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot and see if what I can do with it, play around with it. And so I've actually started somewhat. I've written like a chapter in book 6 already. I have book 7, like topic wise, built out, and an idea of how I'm going to approach it and everything. But I'm not like feeling the pressure and urgency to write these. So will they come out in a month? Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to, take my time and really write, what I feel drawn to write and, how it unfolds and everything, and let it just come out the way it wants to come out. And I'm realizing a lot of times too, when I start a book, I think, okay, I've started this. If I don't finish it, I'm not going to finish it. So I put pressure on me to finish it. And I'm kind of learning and experimenting. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take my time on this one. So I've shown myself that I can write 4 books in a year in a series. I've shown myself I can write a book in a month. And I've shown myself, I can do whatever I put my mind to it. So do I need to, you know, keep every book to a month, or, you know, do another 4-book series and do it in a year? And I get, more freedom to myself, and I'm stepping back and saying, I can do the writing, I can do the podcasting, I can do the investigating. It just takes me to a moment to step back, find the balance, find the time, and just trust in it. And so, am I going to say, hey, since I got a chapter of book 6 done, it's March 6th. When we're recording this, it'll be done by April 6th. No, because I'm not going to put that pressure on me. I'm just going to say, in this springtime, I'm sure book 6 will be done and released. And it's an interesting topic that is one that was recommended to me. So it's taking a little bit longer for me to piece together from my experiences, because it's not a topic I really think about. But when it was proposed to me, I was like, yeah, actually, that does make sense, and I could do it. So it's just a means of finding the rhythm. And if I was to just write and just do the podcasting, I would miss the investigations and going and hanging out with friends and everything and doing interviews. And there has to be a life in there too. And so I'm learning, yeah, not everything has to be scheduled, planned on, and done in such and such a time. That if I want to take a week off of writing, take the week off of writing. It's not the end of the world.
Just trust the process, and your process seems to be working. And now, for our friends, listeners of Let's Find Out, they want to learn more about you, your books, your shows, and definitely get their copy of Deeper Insights into the Mind of Michael. Where can they go find out?
I am on Amazon right now. That's the only place that I'm publishing my books, because I seem to find that I know this is going to sound like an oxymoron, but it is difficult, but the easiest way to publish. And the reason I say difficult is they, for like the cover, for example, they want the image. Then they want to be able to put their verbiage and their titles version over the book. So I got to work with that, make it fit, make it look nice and presentable, readable. And so that takes time. And then I also have to take the manuscript and check it against what they say, and they may not like a font that I used, or they may not like that I have hyperlinks in the book, and they're like, hey, you can't do this. And so I have to decide, do I risk doing a Word document and hope that the hyperlink shows up, or do I do a PDF file where everything is embedded and they say, hey, this isn't going to look right, but we'll let you approve it anyway. And so you got a 50-50 shot because I found with one of my books, when I used Word and put pictures in, the pictures never showed up. But when I did the PDF, the pictures showed up. And so I was like, oh, if I had known that in the beginning. So those are the kind of things where I say, it's difficult because there's nothing that, clearly says, hey, if you're doing this, this is what you have to do. They're assuming you know all of this. And so that's the difficulty. But the easy thing too, though, is they give you, like, when I was talking about this earlier actually today too, about a book, when you publish books, you see people with book prices and you're like, how do you determine that? Well, Amazon has a set formula. If it's Kindle or paperback or hard copy, there's a formula that they're like, yeah, you can't charge less than this and you can't charge more than this. And so, okay, as long as I'm in this range, people will buy it because that's the range people are looking for. And so you're like, okay, I can work with this. And go and I like to go within and say, what number jumps out at me? And I'm like, okay, that's the price I'm picking. And I make all my Kindle books the same price because they're all digital. And I'm like, it's, the first version to actually get approved. And then you could do the paperback and then the hard copy. And there's set page numbers you have to do hard copy versus paperback. And there's a lot of things that people don't normally think about. And so when I figured out after my first book, like you have to have 80 pages at least, I think it's 75 or 80 pages to have a hard copy book. So now when I write my books, no matter what book it is, I'm like, okay, have I reached that 80 page mark? And if I have, I'm like, okay, cool. I can finish here, or I can add a little bit more, or not add anything. Do I want to add images? Because that'll distort the pages and make them more. And so I'm like, okay, I can play with it then. But if I have, say, 60 pages, I'm like, yeah, I can't do the photos. I can't do that because I got to hit this mark first to know for sure it's going to make it. Because if I'm short, in my mind, it's going to be a lot harder to go and add to a story if I got to line up the photos again. And so it's just little tricks and little nuances to publishing. But I highly recommend, if you do want to write and become an author, you have an idea you want to put into a book form. The formula I use is I create a Word document that's 9x6 margins because that's the size of the book that I want to make. And I then type the book and I watch the page number count and I add a page for the title. I add a page for dedication. I add a page if there's a table of contents. Add a page that's kind of my, like, saying welcome to my book, and turn this page if you're ready to go on this adventure. This is what you're to expect in this book. And then you flip the page and there's the first chapter. Well, I don't use page numbers, and I think that's one thing that Amazon doesn't like about me is because when I start typing, I already have in front of it the title page and everything. And so when I go to add page numbers, it wants the title page to be page 1. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Page 1 is the first page
Right.
of the book, and it doesn't let me line that up that way. And so I'm like, forget it. I'm not doing page numbering. And I also learned from my first book, I leave a blank page in there between either the title page and the foreword or a dedication, because when I go to sign the book, if I don't put that blank page in, there's no page to sign. And so I was like, I give myself that page, and sometimes I end up with 2 of them, and sometimes just 1. I think the hard copy comes out with 2 blank pages. And when I say blank page, I don't mean like there's nothing on the front and back. It may be the title page, and then the back of that page is blank, and then something's written on the next page, front and back. And so, yeah, I leave myself room to sign books. If anybody wants a signed copy, they can order that through me. And I simply just charge the amount for the book and the amount that it costs me to UPS to your location. And actually, I don't UPS, I use the post office. So I use the flat rate of media mail. And so I'm like, yeah, so this is how much it costs me to ship it to you through this means. This is the cost of the book. So if you send me this money, as soon as I receive it, I'll order the book. Then I sign it, ship it to you, and you get your signed copy. But yeah, I mean, writing is not what I thought it was going to be, because I thought by writing stuff, it would bring up all the emotions and bring up all the history. And you're going to be like, oh man, I'm drudging up the past. And I don't want to drudge up the past. I want to leave the past where it is. And a friend told me it's actually cathartic. And so I started to write just to see, what he was talking about. And before I knew it, I was like, wow, I had written a lot and realized I didn't get emotionally charged by any of it. And so I bring that up for people who are listening who are like, yeah, I'd love to tell this story, but I don't want to feel what I felt then. Chances are you won't in writing it, depending on how much work you've done around it. Now, I've done a lot of shadow work, so emotionally charging for me doesn't happen as frequently because of all the work I've done. But if you don't do the work, then yeah, you might get charged by what you're writing. So, and another thing that I do that I don't know if you're aware of this, Diego, is if you write something down and then take it outside and like crumble it up or fold it, put it in like a fire pit and burn it, it totally releases all emotional connection to that event. And it's kind of like a clearing. And I've done that a few times, and I found that, yeah, it totally helps relieve a lot of pressure and a lot of pent up emotion.
I never thought about doing that. It might be my next thing that I'll do because as of now, I'm working on my second book and it's been on this hard drive now for many months. So I think I need to follow your advice and just get to it, my friend. And I know that also your shows are available. Also, are you on YouTube? You're also on Rumble, right?
I'm on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, LinkedIn, Spotify, X sometimes, and what's the other one I'm on? Podbean and Acast. So my show, you can find it. It's either going to be audio or video, depending on which format you go to watch. And one thing that I found that kind of was comical talking about Spotify is I upload video episodes to Spotify, and when I watch it, I get just the thumbnail with audio over it. And I was like, why am I wasting my time doing videos when it doesn't show the video? And a friend of mine that has Spotify, but she uses the paid version because of the work she does, she goes, I see video all the time. And I was like, she goes, are you on the pay version of Spotify? And I go, no. She goes, that's why. And so that's something to keep in mind if you're on Spotify and you're like, you want to watch the video. Unfortunately, they make you pay to have that access. And so there are other ways where you can find it on video, like, YouTube, Rumble always has video. And so it all depends on which format you have accessible. And I have a friend that wants me to take my books and create audiobooks and screenplays off of them. And I'm like, screenplay, I might be able to do. Audiobook, not so much, because there's a lot of software you have to get, and then you have to sit down and read the book and have no outside noise while doing that. And I'm like, I don't know that I could sit and read my stories and record them and be like, here it is, and okay, now we're doing Audible. And so that one I'm sitting on because I'm deciding, maybe I'll do that after I get all the books that I have in my mind written, and then go back in the next step, be okay, do I want to read these, or do I want to hire somebody to read the book? And, would I be money ahead doing that? And someone told me if you hire someone, it can take a month or 2 months before you get it back read. So upload into Amazon to be on the Audible. So I was like, man, if it takes them a month and that's their job, how long is it going to take me?
No, it would take me forever, man. But,
Yeah.
And me knowing you, because I know you talking about working on the next book, come back on the show. We'll definitely talk about that. I'm interested in knowing what topics you'll be covering next, and let's get you back on later this year.
Sounds like a great idea.
Thank you, my friend.
Copyright Diego the Podcaster. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out with Diego is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.